Welcome to Solar Oregon's How to Go Solar and Storage Workshop. My name is Nicole and I'm a program manager at the nonprofit Solar Oregon. This is a reoccurring workshop that we've been delivering for home and business owners for over 15 years. Our mission at Solar Oregon is to provide you as the consumer with information you need to make good and informed choices about solar and home battery storage. Solar has changed significantly in the last decade, and it's still changing pretty rapidly. So we work to keep these presentations updated as the industry changes. So thank you all for joining us today. Today, we're going to go ahead and cover many aspects of solar and battery storage. We'll start by taking a look at how solar works, and we'll look at the components in the system, learn about a process called net metering that allows you to get credit for energy you export to the electrical grid and see how that saves you money. Next, we'll look at solar contractors and how they assess your home. We'll see common issues with potential sites that can increase the cost of solar installation or that can prevent you from being able to go solar. We'll take a tour through the exciting and popular topic of battery home storage. This technology has changed a lot in the last few years, and it's becoming more accessible. After that, we'll go ahead and learn about the incentives that are available, and we'll walk through some sample budgets. Then we'll wrap up by talking about contractor selections and what your next steps are if you are interested in going solar. Solar Oregon is a 501c3 nonprofit that has worked to encourage solar and storage adoption throughout Oregon for over 43 years. We do this by providing reliable and impartial consumer education, working to build clean energy communities, and then performing outreach as well as some policy advocacy. We host solarized campaigns, solar tours, zero energy showcases, and expert panel discussions on a range of different topics that have to do with solar. So we are a member-based nonprofit. So thank you to our existing members for being a part of our organization. We cannot do the work we do without your support. If you are interested in joining, you can join online at solaroregon.org, and members receive special discounts to our annual events, such as our solar winery tour, which is coming up in July. So if you like to drink wine and learn about solar technology and storage and meet some really great wine producers in Oregon, that is the event for you. Please come join us out there. We also have discounts for our Go Zero tour for our members as well, which will be this October. And then we appreciate direct donations also, and we are going to add some links into the chat that include additional resources that we're going to refer to throughout the presentation. So I'll go ahead and drop those links in the chat now. And there's really our website as well as solar resources from Energy Trust. So feel free to take a look at those. And let me just get those in there. All right. And then just a little bit more about our upcoming events. We have a really exciting Solar Plus Storage open house coming up this next week, and it's going to be at a energy efficient home built by Ichijo. And so we're really going to be showcasing the energy efficient features of the home, such as the smart electric panel. We also did a talk on this last week, so catch it on YouTube if you missed it. And then this one, we're going to actually say it live and then do a simulated live power shutoff. So if there's a power outage, you can see how those technologies work together to make your home more resilient. So that'll be Saturday, June 17th, and there'll be a couple presentations. So you can register on our Eventbrite, which is the same place you registered for this. And yeah, join us there. It should be a really exciting and interesting solar plus storage event. This workshop is supported by Energy Trust of Oregon. They're an independent nonprofit that was established in 2002 that provides resources to help enable customers of the investor-owned utilities in our state to use energy efficiently and gain access to renewable energy. They offer key incentives for solar installation, and in 2022, they were authorized by the legislator to offer incentives for battery storage as well. So thank you, Energy Trust. And then just some housekeeping before we roll into the main part of the presentation. If you have any questions throughout this presentation today, please throw them in the Q&A. It should be in the menu bar in your Zoom dashboard, and we will be reviewing those in a Q&A session at the end of the meeting. And then if you have like any resources you want to share or anything else, you can throw that into the chat, but just make sure to direct the question to the Q&A because we want to make sure that we get your questions answered. And then we're also going to launch some polls just so we can know where you're coming from today, and we can make sure that we are getting this education out to the community. So I'm going to go right into those. The first poll is a location poll, just where are you joining from today? So I'll go ahead and launch that. Great, and it looks like we have people coming from mostly Portland, Oregon, as well as another state, the Oregon coast. Great. I'll go ahead and launch the next poll. It's a demographics poll. All right. And then I'll go ahead and roll into the next poll here. And this is just going to ask about your familiarity with the incentives that are available. This just helps us know if we're reaching the community with the incentives, because we want you to know about those so that you can access solar as easily as possible. And then we will do one more poll at the end of the survey, just ask you about this event and get your feedback there. So thank you all for your answers. We really appreciate it. That helps us make these webinars and workshops better and better each time. All right, now we'll just jump into the main part of the presentation, and we'll start with looking at how solar works. This diagram is of a typical home solar system. You can see the house in the middle of the diagram. And then looking on the left, you can see the sunlight strikes the solar panels labeled as photovoltaic panels, sometimes also called PV, and produces a voltage of electricity. This is a special type of electricity called DC or direct current. And then it is different than the AC electricity or alternating current that is used in your home. So if you look at that diagram, you can see that there's a special device called an inverter or microinverter that will convert that electricity produced by your panels, so the DC into AC, so that your home can use it and it can be utilized by your outlets and circuits in your home. From the inverter, the electricity will flow into your electrical panel, also sometimes called a breaker box, and into the circuits in your home. There can power your lights and appliances or charge an electric vehicle. We also have some presentations on electric vehicles on our YouTube, so check those out if you're interested in learning more. And then if your solar system is producing more electricity than you're using at any given moment, the excess electricity flows out of your home and onto the electrical grid. There it can be used by other homes and businesses. And at moments when you need more electricity than your solar is producing, you can still purchase that energy from the grid. And this is called a grid-tied solar system. So a little bit different than off-grid, which is like the cabin in the woods, not connected to any other grids. And then when you go solar, you get a special utility meter that's installed and measures the flow of electricity in both directions. And it's a bi-directional meter. And this allows you to use a system called net metering, which we'll go into further in this presentation. And then that's really all there is for a solar system. So it's pretty simple. And that's one of the reasons why it's so low maintenance. So once you get your solar panels installed, connect to the grid, you don't have to do too much. So let's take a closer look at that inverter that we talked about. So that's, again, the device that'll convert the DC electricity of your solar panels into AC electricity for your home. And there are two options available. First, inverters, and then second, microinverters. So you can see on the left is the inverter and on the right is the microinverter, and those would be connected directly to the panel as opposed to connected via conduit on your house. The smaller black boxes pictured on the right, we said are microinverters. And so these, you'll need a few of them, and they can be connected to one or two panels. And then both inverters work great. So it just depends on what contractor you work with and what the needs of your system are to determine whether you get an inverter or microinverter. Solar panels can be mounted either on your roof or on the ground mount. Most of the solar panels we see are roof mounted, as it's a great utilization of space and is closer to your breaker box when you're connecting the system. And then ground mounted can be great if you are looking to utilize more space or you have different needs. So if you, let's say, have a farm and have a lot of that space and wanted to utilize those panels, you could do that. Just keep in mind that you still have to connect it to the house. So if you're doing a far distance from the house, you'll need more conduit, which can increase the costs. And then the vast majority of solar panels installed in Oregon look like the ones that we have seen so far. So roof mounted, pretty typical what you see in the area, but there's also another technology that we get asked about sometimes called solar shingles. And this is a roof tile and also a solar producer. So it is not as common just because it can be quite expensive. But if it's something you're interested in, just make sure that you discuss that with your contractor and that they have done this before and have experience, and maybe some customers they can refer you to talk about that experience, since that technology is so new. All right. And as mentioned earlier, we're going to dive a little deeper into net metering. So net metering is the process that allows you to account for the energy you export, so you can gain credit for it. And this is important to have a home solar system that matches your electrical consumption needs, meaning that you want to be able to utilize the power you're producing from your solar system and not have to buy a bunch back from the grid. So that is really important in reviewing when you get into planning and working with your contractor. They're going to look at what your consumption is at your home. We'll illustrate how this works with these two graphs. So the graph on the left shows us what happens in the summer months. The orange bar shows how much electricity you've produced with your solar panels, and the blue bar shows how much you've used in your home with lights and other appliances. Because you produced more than you consumed this month, you are your exporter. So you're exporting electricity. And then the green arrow shows the difference. So that's your net metering credit earned. The graph on the right shows a typical winter month. And It's showing your consumption being similar to that summer month on the left. But maybe because it's winter, you're not getting so much solar resource. And so you have to purchase a little bit more energy from the grid. And that is demonstrated by that red arrow. So with net metering, the credits you earn during the sunny summer months will hopefully offset the electricity you purchase in the cloudy winter months. While net metering credits roll over from month to month, they don't roll over from year to year. So they start April 1st, and you want to try to utilize those credits before the following year starts on April 1st, because they won't roll over year to year. But if you produce a lot in the summer, you can use them in the winter, which is great here because we get so much rain and clouds in the winter. If we can produce a lot in the summer, that will help us with our overall cost. And then here's an example energy bill or electricity bill. This is an example from a PGE customer. In the box on the left, you can see the period for which you're being billed, the reading on your bidirectional meter at the beginning of the month and at the end. And then thanks to your new bidirectional meter, you're going to be able to see the electricity that you export or import or buy from the grid. And this example is showing that you actually exported this month because you produced an extra 327 kilowatt hours. So that means you have now gained that as a credit that you can use later. Because you were a net exporter this month, your billable kilowatt hours is 0. But as you can see, your bill is not 0. So if you are grid tied, there is a certain utility connection fee that you have to pay, and that base charge is about $11. So you can see that illustrated on the right, as well as there's some additional fees for being, connected to the grid. So $12.63 is not bad considering the average bill is around $70 a month. So having solar will help alleviate that monthly cost, and then you're also doing something great for the environment. Something to know about solar is that it is highly modular, and they can vary widely in size and setup, and it really depends on what your needs are. So that is where the contractor will come in and review those needs with you when you're designing and setting up your solar system. The average size for a solar system in Oregon is 8 kilowatts. But what determines your size, you might ask? Well, it is based, again, on consumption. And we want to make sure that we're trying to design a system that is going to cover how much energy we consume. Something to take into account is like if your energy needs are going to be changing, someone's moving out, or you're adding an electric vehicle eventually, you want to consider that in your planning. And then other factors that can limit your system size are available roof space, budget, limitations based on the neighborhood you live in, like if you're part of an HOA or a condo association. That's good to know. HOAs cannot prevent you from going solar, but they can apply restrictions to how you go solar. For example, like maybe they apply a restriction that you cannot install the solar on a street facing roof. So that might be your south facing roof and where you get the best solar resource. So you really want to take those into consideration. And if you have any questions about those, let us know. All right, so now that we kind of looked at how solar works, we're going to look at aspects of your home that can make it easier or more difficult for you to go solar. So I talked a little bit about solar resource, and that's really tied to your solar access. So regardless of your location in the state, the orientation of your roof has a big impact on your solar access. This diagram here shows a home and its orientation with respect to the cardinal directions. The arcs over the home show the path of the sun in the summer and in the winter. And regardless of the season, the sun will always be in the southern sky when we are here in Oregon. So that means that your south-facing roofs are going to be ideal. However, both west and east-facing roofs can work great. In cloudier parts of the state, roofs facing due east can be slightly less effective. And that's just because the clouds tend to persist through the early morning here and block some of that early sunlight. And the only roof panes that consistently do not get installed on are north facing or northwest or northeast, as those just don't give you the access to solar resource the way that southern exposure would. And then even if you have the perfect south facing roof, you have to consider shading and what trees you have on your property or other structures that might be blocking that solar resource from getting to your solar panels. It can be hard to self-assess how the shading will impact your solar system. So when you get a system and work with a contractor, they might imply a on-site visit where they can use a solometric, which will measure the amount of solar resource that your roof gets and can really look at if it makes sense to go solar. But if you have trees, it's not bad. It's great to have trees. They're beautiful and they can help shade your house. So just something to consider if you are looking into getting solar. Another thing to look at is the complexity of your roof. And solar systems can be split into sections, but it's ideal to allow for a single continuous installation on one roof. The image on the left shows the roof with a complex roof geometry. And although there's a lot of areas where you can install solar, they're small and you really have to break up your system into a bunch of arrays, which would increase the cost and may impact the efficiency. And the image on the right shows a roof that has a continuous area, which is really better for installing solar. So you can keep that continuous array. And then hopefully with that, you have a lower cost. And then the biggest factor is the condition of your roof. So roofs have a limited lifespan. And so if your roof reaches the end of its lifetime, you'll have to replace it, right? And so if you have solar panels already installed, those have to be uninstalled and then reinstalled. And the contractors have to usually work with an electrician, which can increase the cost. So uninstalling and reinstalling can be $10,000 or more. So for that reason, we definitely recommend that you have like 20 plus years of roof life left if you're looking to install solar. Different roof types have different lifetimes. So for example, metal roofs usually have a longer lifespan than regular shingles. And so if you're needing to re-roof, maybe consider adding your panels once that new roof is added. Finally, we'll also look at another factor, which is what is under your roof. In order to get building permits for your installation, your contractor will need to get inside your attic to check the structure of your roof. And note that some jurisdictions are pickier than others. For example, Portland has some more restrictions than, for example, other surrounding jurisdictions outside of Portland. So newer homes tend to have trusses, which are pictured on the left, and these are just extra vertical and horizontal support beams. So that just helps because it's got more structural integrity to support that solar system on your roof. You can also get solar sometimes if you have rafters, but it has to just be approved and looked at by an electrician and the contractor to make sure that your roof can support that system. So having rafters only is not bad necessarily. It could still be sufficient for your jurisdiction. It just has to be reviewed and make sure that it has meets those requirements. So if, for example, your rafters or your roof does not meet the requirements, they may have to re-engineer your roof or add trusses, which can be like $2,000 to $3,000 of additional cost. So definitely want to take that into consideration if you're looking to get solar. Now that we've looked at how solar works, important factors when you're considering solar, we're going to jump into the new and popular topic of battery storage. It's important to know that your solar system by itself does not allow you to use solar electricity during a power outage. To do this, you have to add a battery. So this ability to use power when the grid is down is called energy resilience. Solar and battery storage are complementary technologies. So solar makes the battery more effective by recharging it, and your battery allows you to access your solar independently from the grid. So they work really well hand in hand, and definitely something to consider if the goal of your solar system is energy resilience. And then here's just a look at an example of a home with solar plus storage. You can see that they have a solar system installed on the roof, and then they also have a battery connected in the garage, which is pictured on the left. Something else to consider is if you're interested in energy resilience, what kind of event are you looking to withstand? So if you are getting a lot of small quick power outages and it's caused, by wildlife in the area, then maybe you just need there's like these special protection things you can put around your solar panels that will help that and help mitigate some of the small things. And so you might only need a home battery storage that is small to withstand a small outage. Some other outage reasons in the area are public safety power shutoffs, which is becoming more common due to wildfires. And the first one we had in Oregon was in 2020. And so if you're looking to withstand that, you might need some more battery storage. And then the Cascadia seismic event, which could knock out power for weeks, and on the Oregon coast, maybe even longer, that you would definitely, if you're trying to back up your whole home, you would need a lot of batteries, but there is another option where you can do a partial backup, which we will get into later. So picking a battery, it's just like important to consider your needs for your home, just like for the panels. You need to consider that when you're getting storage. So if your power never goes out, perhaps you don't need storage right now. But if you are wanting solar plus storage and are looking to do a phased approach, like adding one without the other, it's just important to know about that plan before you start installing your system so that you can accommodate those additions down the road. Most batteries have between a 9 and 14 kilowatt hour capacity. Some manufacturers make smaller units, typically around 3 to 4 kilowatt hours, and some make supersized units that are up to 20 kilowatt hours. The major batteries on the market intended for homes attached to the grid are usually one of two chemistries. So there's a nickel, manganese, cobalt, which is a lower price usually, and the more common lithium iron phosphate, as it has a longer lifetime. So for standard household electrical loads like lights, appliances, things like that, many batteries will perform well. But if you're intending to use a battery to back up a load that requires a lot of instantaneous power like a motor, your contractor will need to factor that in. So really important in the planning phase, again, to know what your needs of your system are and share that with your contractor so you can plan and make sure your system meets those requirements. And then whenever you're adding storage, it's really important to set your expectations about what a battery can do and what it cannot do. So even if you don't use much electricity, a single battery will almost never back up your entire home for a meaningful period of time. So just like we mentioned earlier, there's the option for a whole backup or partial backup. So if you do that partial backup, certain circuits in your home will receive power from the battery, but the rest of your home will lose power. So if you do that, some people will pick very selective loads that they want to keep powered during an outage and really focus to keep those running, and instead of trying to back up the whole home, which can be just cost prohibitive. When you get a partial home backup, the way you divide your home into sections that are backed up and sections that are not is based on the breakers in your electrical panel. So if you've selected which circuits you want to receive battery power, your contractor will remove those breakers and place them into a newly installed smaller essential loads panel. And this second electrical panel will be wired to the battery. There is another technology that is newer that is a smart electrical panel, which is really neat because in real time you can change what loads are getting that energy or pulling from the battery. So that is another really exciting technology if you want more flexibility with your backup. The battery system sizing process will entail a detailed conversation with your contractor, balancing your desired functionality with your budget. So a way to think of this process is what needs power and for how long. Items most frequently chosen to be backed up with an essential loads panel are like a couple outlets, so you can charge laptops and phones, a few lights, and a refrigerator so that you don't lose your food in the refrigerator, and you can keep that running and not have to worry about spoilage. So those are really important factors to consider. All right, and if you're interested in installing a battery, when you install can affect both the system design and the price. So again, back to planning, really like think about what your needs are and what you want to do with your system, not just in the short term, but also the long term. Why can the timing of battery installation affect the design? That is really simple. It's just if you didn't plan to install a battery, maybe you don't have the right layout for your system or conduit running to the right locations to add that battery, and you might have to switch some things around. And then there are two types of electricity, like we discussed earlier, and batteries, just like solar panels, use DC. So while your home uses AC, your battery is part of an initial system design your contractor can use to select the inverter that serves both of these components. So that'll impact the inverter selection and whether your contractor looks at placement, the placement of the inverter, or if they're going to do a string inverter or a micro inverter. And then, however, if you add a battery to a pre-existing solar system, you will likely need to change that inverter. And then there are other inefficiencies that can be introduced, including spatial constraints for mounting equipment near the electrical panel. And then some of the incentives require solar plus storage to be installed at the same time to claim or access that incentive. And then just be aware that battery storage can require a significant amount of space. Most systems are not as big as the picture noted here. This is a pretty large system with massive batteries, so you might not need that much space depending on what kind of system you're installing, but it's just good to know that National Electric Code does not allow batteries to be installed in crawl spaces, cupboards, or similar confined spaces. And yeah, so that is just really good to consider when you're thinking about system placement and working with your contractor. Now let's look at the great incentives that exist for solar and battery storage. And we'll walk through a couple example budgets as well. So there are two main incentives available to homeowners going solar in Oregon. First is the investment tax credit, or the ITC, also called the Residential Energy Tax Credit, and the Energy Trust of Oregon Standard Solar Incentive is the other main incentive. And so you can see that the ITC is a dollar for dollar tax credit, meaning that you can reduce the taxes you owe by 30% of the cost of your solar or battery storage installation. And then this is an incentive that you don't receive immediately. You must apply for it when you file your taxes. Note if you don't owe any taxes, or if you don't owe enough taxes in the year which you install, you can claim this credit over the course of several years. And then the Energy Trust of Oregon Standard Incentive is a flat $400 to $500 reimbursement to any customer who is a PGE or Pacific Power customer installing solar. And so the amount that you can access depends, if you're PGE or Pacific Power. And then you get that immediately, and you usually work with your solar installer or contractor to access those incentives. And then if your utility is not PGE or Pacific Power, you will not qualify for the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive, but you may receive additional incentives from your utility company. So those are just good things to check before you go solar, because you want to make sure you're not missing out on any of the incentives. And then just a disclaimer, Solar Oregon is not a tax professional, and the information that we're sharing with you is for educational purposes only. Do not interpret anything you hear as official tax advice. That being said, there are a few things to know about the ITC. The ITC covers the cost of both solar and battery storage. It applies to traditional solar panels as well as solar roof tiles. This incentive is straightforward and easy to claim and has helped countless home and business owners attain solar since 2006. However, be aware that you are ultimately responsible for making sure you're claiming this credit correctly. There are many myths and misconceptions about what to do and what to claim. So the most common is that re-roofing costs can be claimed, and they cannot be claimed. So it's just for installing the solar and storage. And if you're claiming the credit on your own and have questions about what expenses qualify, seek advice from a qualified tax professional. Not everything that's out online is up to date or accurate. This credit is claimed on IRS Form 5695 and Section 3 of IRS Form 1040. Beyond ITC and the Energy Trust Standard incentive, there are two incentives available only to income qualifying homeowners. One is the Energy Trust of Oregon Solar Within Reach incentive, or the SWR, and that's $1 per watt incentive that allows Pacific Power and PGE customers to reduce their installation costs by up to $6,000. The income threshold for qualification is relatively generous. For example, a household of 4 qualifies for solar within reach if their total income is less than $112,860. So you can find the cutoff for all these at the Energy Trust website, and the link is in the chat. The second income-based incentive is the Oregon Solar Plus Storage Rebate. This provides up to $5,000 for solar and up to an additional $2,500 for battery storage if they are installed at the same time. So that's also something to consider. If you are installing one without the other, that you won't be able to access the entirety of this incentive. So that could be a benefit of installing both at the same time, as well as then your system works together. It's designed to have both solar and storage and can be more efficient overall. And then before we look at some example budgets for solar and storage, we're just going to recap the reasons why both solar and battery storage costs vary so widely. The cost depends, like we said, on the size of the system, re-roofing, structural analysis, structural reinforcement. And then for batteries, the cost depends on if you're installing solar plus storage at the same time versus installing the home battery storage after, and installation for location. So if it's far from the electrical panel, and then as well as if you're looking to do an essential loads panel or add something like a smart electrical panel. And then if you have more than one battery, so if you're trying to back up more loads from your house, then you might have to install more than one battery to satisfy that need. And then in addition to these reasons, there's also the availability of incentives. These incentives are changing. The tax one stays pretty much the same, as well as the Energy Trust incentive, but it's just good to know that the incentives are changing. So definitely, if you're unsure or if you're ready to move forward, come to another webinar and check out what the incentives are currently, and check out the Energy Trust website as well. All right, so we're going to look at some sample budgets. This first sample budget is looking at if you were just to get solar installed on your home. So you can see this is taking, like, I guess that you're going to be, well, it looks like I jumped a few ahead. Let's get back to where we were. So this is just solar. And it's going to look at the cost of solar, if you can access the incentives or not, as well as if you're a PGE customer, if you're income qualifying. So if we look at this, you can see the cost before the incentives for an 8 kilowatt system, which is the average size, is $32,000. But if you are able to access the Energy Trust incentive, you get an additional $400 to $500 off, depending on if you're a PGE or Pacific Power customer. And then on the right side, those columns show if you're income qualifying, that you could access up to $6,000, $7,000 in additional incentives for your solar panels. And then there's also that state rebate, the Oregon Solar Plus Storage rebate. And so if you're income qualifying, you can access that, and that knocks it down. So you've basically got more than $10,000 off your installation. And then everyone, as long as you have tax liability, can apply for the federal tax credit, or the ITC. And that, again, is 30% of your installation costs. So we can see the savings as they range across. If you are a Pacific Power customer, you're saving about $10,000. PGE, it's about the same. If you are income qualifying, you can get an additional almost like half off of your installation. So it's really good to know your incentives and be aware of which ones you can access so you can get the biggest benefit. And then this next example is if you're installing solar plus storage. So again, it just assumes the same size solar system at 8 kilowatts. But then it also is looking at if you were going to add, for example, a 10 kilowatt hour home storage battery. And so you can see your cost goes up for installation to have solar plus storage. And so that's about $10,000 more for installation. But you can access, if you see an additional battery incentive, which is great, as that will help if you're income qualifying. And then again, you still get to access that federal tax credit. So then going again, if you're a Pacific Power company or Pacific Power customer, you're getting almost $14,000 off. Same for PGE. And then if you're income qualifying, again, it's like knocking it down almost by half. So again, really good to look at. And then the next example is if you install your storage after. So right at the top 2 rows, you can see that the cost of solar was the same because we're still assuming the 8 kilowatt system. So that's $32,000. But then adding the battery after does often increase your costs, as your system might need to be rearranged to add that battery. And it also impacts the amount of incentives that you can access. So you can't get the battery incentive that you were able to access if you installed both at the same time. So your cost of installing batteries after, you're already increasing your initial cost by about $10,000. And then you see less incentives. So it's taking the Pacific Power and PGE customer, like you're getting, 16,000 or so off. And then with income qualifying, you're not quite getting that full half off that you were able to access if you install both at the same time. So when you're considering installing solar plus storage, again, it's important to think about what your system needs are and plan for it so that you don't end up paying that extra $10,000. Because solar and battery storage have a large upfront cost, it is important to really look at what your options are for those incentives, but also some homeowners might utilize financing. Some homeowners can obtain a loan through their bank, which might have an existing relationship or some type of way you can qualify for financing for your solar system. But some banks do not approve loans for products that are involving solar. So then you might have a credit union you can access through your contractor or a third-party broker. These types of loans allow you to refinance when you claim the federal tax incentive or ITC, and then that can help minimize the total interest that you owe on the loan. So note that these payments on your loan do not qualify for the tax credit. And if you're looking at financing, it's really important to look at all the small print. So what fees are you paying and compare that so that you can make good financial decisions. And then you might also want to work with a financial professional or a tax professional to make sure you're making the right choice for your situation. And then finally, we're going to look at how to select a contractor and what to expect regarding the installation process. Besides offering incentives for solar, Energy Trust of Oregon has a certificate program for contractors to help ensure high quality of workmanship. So the Energy Trust Trade Ally contractors have been rigorously vetted, and they are the only contractors who can offer you the Energy Trust of Oregon solar incentives. So we recommend working with a Trade Ally contractor. And then when you're ready to get a quote or find a contractor, there is a very convenient tool on the Energy Trust website. We put the link in the chat for this, and it allows you to request a free assessment from 3 highly rated Trade Ally contractors in your area. Some more remote areas might not have as many contractors in the area, but definitely you want to try to get at least 3 quotes that you can compare to make sure you're getting the best service and deal. So this online form through Energy Trust only takes 3 to 5 minutes, and it's a good way to ensure that you're being connected with a reputable company. And again, that link is in the chat. And then once you've selected your contractor and signed your contract, this is kind of what you can expect as the next step for the installation process. Your contractor will handle all the permitting. They'll apply for the Energy Trust and Oregon state incentives, not the tax incentive though. And then although your system design can be quick, some jurisdictions have been experiencing permitting delays. So that's something to consider anytime you're doing a home project. And then some delays are a little bit longer in the Portland area, or depending on how many contractors you can access in your location. That installation is pretty quick. It's usually 1 to 2 days, but sometimes permitting can take 2 to 12 months. So once you get through permitting, the installation is usually pretty fast. And then your contractor will manage your permit inspections, coordinate installation of your new bi-directional meter, and schedule your interconnection with the utility, which can take about 2 to 3 weeks. Once you're interconnected, your system will be producing clean, renewable power from the sunlight falling on your property. So it's really exciting once you get started. And then just be sure to try to get those quotes from at least 3 contractors and plan. So make sure that you are planning a system that works with you and sharing your needs with your contractor so you get the best outcome. All right. Well, now we're going to go ahead and turn to the Q&A portion. Just a reminder, throw any questions you have in the Q&A box. And great, it looks like we don't have a ton of questions today, but if you do have any, here is my email. Feel free to reach out at any time. We also will post this presentation on YouTube, and we also have our past presentations on there as well. So those are a good resource if you're wanting to learn more. And the links in the chat also have some great resources just to help get you started. And then it looks like we have a question that just came in. So when the grid is down, can solar be used during sunlight hours? So when the grid's down, if you have home battery storage connected, you can pull from your battery. If you just have solar, you cannot, there's nothing to pull from because you're grid tied. So, and you're not connected to a home battery storage system. So in order to pull when the grid goes down, you definitely need a battery. And then if you have a battery, your solar panels can charge it during an outage. So for example, let's say the grid goes down, you've used what you can from your battery, and then it's a sunny day the next day, your solar panels can help replenish that battery. And it's also consider how long of an outage you're trying to be able to handle. So that's important to consider too with your storage and solar system. Great. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free again to reach out. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of really exciting in-person events coming up. We are going to be in Hillsborough, and there will be a solar plus storage open house like I discussed earlier, and it'll be a brand new home that was built by Achijo, and we'll be reviewing the energy efficient features of the home and then do a simulated live power shutoff, which we have not done before. So I'm really excited to see how it works. Hopefully we see you all there. Thank you.